let's move on to some late round tight end dreamers.
Tight. Yeah, it's tight.
Tight. All right. So let's talk about a tight end that you're comfortable drafting outside of the top 12 running backs, tight ends. Keone, you want to go first?
Sure. So you might be a little like skeptical about like top or out of the top 12, but that's mostly because we're going to talk about them later. And so like all of the top 12 are pretty viable depending on where you get them in the draft.
And anything after that, I mean, you're taking a flyer on the tight end anyway, I feel like.
Yeah. So yeah, these are kind of what these guys are going to act as. But I think I chose Gerald Everett because we've talked about him a few times on the podcast, and I think he's a tight end though that people are kind of going to forget about because one, he changed teams in the off season, so it's like kind of maybe getting lost in the shuffle of like, oh, where did he go, or like, oh, he's no like the Rams. Oh yeah, like you have Tyler Higbee there now, and then it's like where did Gerald Everett go? And it's like, I have other tight ends to look at, but I mean, he's still a viable option for where you can get him in the draft. But here's why he's a viable option. I think he gets a bit of an upgrade, even though the Rams did get Matt Stafford. They would have had Matt Stafford and Tyler Higbee, as I just said. And I think that would have created a lot of like, I think Tyler Higbee wins there. So I think it's good for him to go to a place where he's going to be the number one tight end, probably, because I don't think Will Dissly, I'm sorry, but I don't think you're the guy there in Seattle. He's been there for a few years, and he's just kind of been either the second or third tight end every time. And so I think Jacob Hollister and both Greg Olsen are gone from that team now. So it's basically a two tight end like order with Dissly as the second guy. So if Everett can be that number one tight end in the two option versus the three option. I know it kind of sounds a little confusing, but like last year they had basically Hollister, Olsen, and Dissly, but then in 2019 they only had like Hollister and Dissly. And with that, Hollister got 59 targets in only 11 games. So I think if Everett can fit that role and play the entire season, you know, that's a good amount of targets for a tight end. And they get touchdowns in Seattle compared to, I think he only had like one touchdown last year in LA. So that's not the best. And also Russell Wilson, I think we expect him to have a good year, or at least I do. Maybe not Ryan, because he's discussed that. But last year he had his best completion percentage of his career with 68.8%. So that's really good. And so even though he might, I guess, trail off a little bit in receptions or targets because LA targets a little bit more, I think I like the ability for Russell Wilson to complete those passes better. And it's a two-back system, or a two tight end system, as I said. So I think you can get him later in the draft. And for that, I think he has some of the highest value out there. So
yeah,
that's why Gerald Everett.
He's been sneaking up in ADP recently, so I think people have been listening to our podcast or something and hearing that we are on the Gerald Everett hype train over here. I'll go next. Jonnu Smith is my tight end, late round tight end dream from the New England Patriots. Heading into this offseason, a lot of people were excited to see where Jonnu Smith landed, being one of the best blocking and receiving tight ends in the league. He finished tight end 10 and scored 8 touchdowns last season. Then he landed with the Patriots, an obvious run first team, especially in the red zone. Then they went and signed Hunter Henry, another high touted free agent tight end. I moved both of them down to my rankings because of the news, and why wouldn't you? Two tight ends, let more mouths to feed, less targets going around. And Jonnu Smith, the better blocking tight end. for a run for his team. Well, since then, Hunter Henry has been injured. He's missed some practices, still not fully back. He is somewhat back, but very limited. And he's often injured. Look at intern Aaron, and he knows what's up. Jonnu is going to be the tight end you want to have out of this team. Rookie quarterback Mac Jones has been looking good in preseason, and we all know a young quarterback's tight end of best friend is his tight end. So Jonnu Smith is a somewhat safer pick in the later rounds if you don't get a top tight end. They start the season with the Miami Dolphins, who is a decent but not great defense, and then they're at the Jets. Then they play the Saints and Tampa Bay, so you might want to move on from him before that. But I think he could get you through the first few weeks if you just punt the position completely and go away from tight end. Ryan, who you got for us?
So for me, if we're going to miss on the top 12 tight ends, then I'm obviously going to stream. So I'm looking for matchups, and I like the first two matchups for Austin Hooper. So they play as KC in week 1, and KC was in the top 10 of giving up receptions, yards, and tight ends, and fantasy points to tight ends. So they obviously are weak right there. They drafted a rookie, and rookie linebackers struggle. Baker, 9 of his 26 touchdowns were to tight ends last year. And so I'm like, okay, that's a good matchup there. And then they play the Texans week 2. So could be a 2-week stretch where you kind of steal a touchdown. Maybe Austin Hooper has a good breakout game. No, not breakout game, but a good game week 1. Steal a touchdown week 2, and then you move on. But if you're missing out these top 12, you're going to be streaming for a while. So you just got to look at these matchups.
Hey you! Check out some of these other cool videos we have, as well as subscribe and click that bell. It really helps our channel out. And don't forget to stay dreamin'.